everyone, and welcome to the first episode of the second season of Jets Landing Zone, formerly Jets Flight Pack. This is your one-stop destination for all things Jets. I'm your host, Walt, and let's head over to the LZ. After a slow start to the free agency period, Joe Douglas and the Jets have slowly fashioned a solid offseason. It first started with JD going back to a familiar well and signing former San Francisco 49ers cornerback Isaiah Oliver to a one-year deal worth $2.5 million. The 27-year-old will probably back up Michael Carter III in the slot, and given that he has experience in the Jets' current defensive system, being that he previously played under defensive coordinator Jeff Ulbrich, he should be able to slide right in and provide depth for the secondary room. Douglas wasn't finished with the secondary, as he also re-signed safety Chuck Clark. You might say, Chuck Clark re-signed? Well, the former Raven was acquired by the Jets last season for a 2024 7th-round pick before suffering a season-ending knee injury in one of the final OTAs of the preseason. So if you weren't following the preseason carefully, you probably missed him. But that's okay. He's back healthy and will probably take the starting safety job vacated by the loss of last year's starter in Jordan Whitehead, who went back to Tampa Bay. One of the things that made me excited about his signing last year is that Clark is an excellent tackler, which is something the Jets have struggled with. At 29 years old, I think he's a guy that many Jet fans won't be familiar with at the start of the season, but will grow to appreciate as the season goes on. The Jets also retained the services of their two stud kickers, Greg Zuerlein and Thomas Morstead. Both players were among the Jets' most valuable and consistent players last year. The hope here is that they continue to play at a high level, something that's a little risky considering their ages, as Zuerlein is 36, while Morstead is 2 years his elder at 38. Now, the one thing I know we need to talk about is the loss of Jets star edge rusher Bryce Huff. Gangrene sack leader, the once undrafted rookie, signaled early on that he wouldn't be given the hometown discount, and sure to his word, the man got paid quickly to the tune of $51 million. Now in Philly, they'll look to see if he can continue his growth and become one of the NFL stars. Now, while this may be an unpopular opinion, I think that the Jets were right to let him go. Given the constraints of their salary cap situation, there were too many holes that they needed to address, and they did draft his possible replacement last year in Will McDonald. The thinking here is, if they were able to develop Huff, there's no reason to think that they can't do the same thing with the extremely athletic McDonald. Now, given the fact that the Jets were looking to add depth to their defensive line, they went out and re-signed defensive tackle Solomon Thomas, but also went out and signed free agents former Cardinals defensive tackle Leki Fotu and former Niners defensive tackle Javon Kinlaw. Now, given at the time before the signings that they had only one proven defensive tackle signed in Quinnen Williams, these moves made sense. Solomon is a solid player on the field and a leader in that locker room. Kinlaw is a rotational piece that'll probably give Michael Clemens a run for his money for the title as the scariest, gruffiest player on the team. And Fotu is a big fatty, a bigger version of former Jet Al Woods, who still has a chance to come back as he rehabs from a torn Achilles. Fotu tips the scales at 334, and at 6'5", he has a chance to be a wall on that defensive line. Now that we've spent some time on the defense, without argument the strongest side of the Jets last year, we shift our focus onto the offensive side of the ball, where the Jets made major strides this offseason. Joe Douglas first addressed probably one of the biggest complaints Jets fans had all season after quarterback Aaron Rodgers went down in the first game of the season by signing former Giants backup quarterback Tyrod Taylor. Signing a 2-year, $12 million contract, the 34-year-old Taylor will be joining his 7th team, which include all 3 New York teams, the Bills, the Giants, and now the Jets. A solid backup. The only worry we have is the fact that he struggled to stay healthy at times, a theme we'll hit on a little bit later. He'll be an asset if he has to take a snap or two if Rodgers ends up missing a couple of games. However, that injury bug will be a bigger issue if the role asks him to do more. But the biggest thing that Joe Douglas and the Jets have taken care of this early offseason has been the offensive line and wide receiver. Offensive line was a gigantic issue last year, as the Jets had an incredibly tough time keeping bodies healthy on that unit. 13 different starting combinations, 9 players forced to play 2 or more positions on that line, 15 different players taking snaps, and 5 of them ending the season on IR. Yeah, you get the idea. Laken Tomlinson was the only player of that group to start all 17 games, so clearly there was a mandate to get that group right. Now, Douglas took a familiar approach to the line, a moderate price for a risky player, but it appears at least for now he has the makings of a solid lineup. The first chip was signing former Ravens guard John Simpson to a 2-year, $18 million contract. A replacement for Tomlinson, the 26-year-old has shown a mean streak in the running game. He struggled with penalties, but JD believes he's a keeper. Now, a trade with the Ravens also brought back a familiar face in tackle Morgan Moses. With the team he was with the team back in 2021, But he's a player that the Jets probably never should have let leave. He did fight through some injuries last year, causing him to miss 3 games, but he brings a lot of needed stability to that line. The next acquisition is probably the biggest one, as the Jets were able to land former Cowboys left tackle and 8-time Pro Bowler Tyron Smith. The 33-year-old does come with some risk, as he's missed 37 games over the past 4 seasons. But when he's healthy, Smith is an elite pass protector, one of the best in the game. Which brings us to the latest signing by the Jets and Chargers wide receiver Mike Williams, who signed a 1-year deal worth $15 million. A huge signing that gives star Garrett Wilson a running mate. The 30-year-old Williams gives quarterback Aaron Rodgers a huge target at 6'4", a player who's willing to climb the ladder and fight for contested catches. He gives the Jets offense that much-needed element that they've been lacking for quite a while now. Now, in my opinion, it's been a strong but muted offseason so far for the Jets, with splashy moves in Tyron Smith and Mike Williams. Considering the fact that they've kind of been constrained somewhat by the salary cap, Joe D has been able to address most of the Jets' outstanding issues ahead of the draft, which now gives them the flexibility in that they're not forced to use their first-round pick on a lineman, but rather the best player available. It also gives them the flexibility to trade back and try and get another pick in the second round, one they currently don't have because of the Aaron Rodgers trade last year. Well, we'll be back again in time for the draft in April to discuss the Jets and their picks, as well as if there's any news before then. So until then, thanks for watching, and as always, go Jets.